Do you want to know how to boost performance, drive accountability, and scale growth across every unit in your business? Now, in this episode, we're going to reveal how leading brands are turning their teams, whether they're franchises or entrepreneurs, into leaders, into high-performing, growth-driven entrepreneurs.
Welcome to Fordify Live with your host, Ford Saeks.
Today's guest is Angela Coté, a growth advisor and the founder of AC Inc., where she helps business leaders. She helps them unlock their full potential, improve their teams, especially when they're feeling stuck or stretched too thin. Now, she's got a background in scaling one of Canada's top franchise brands and decades of hands-on experience. Now, we know that my listeners of the show are entrepreneurs, they're franchisees, franchisors, business groups. So we have a wide range, and we're live right now on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter, Instagram, and a few other places. So, Angela, before I go any further, welcome to Fordify Live.
Oh my gosh, I'm loving the energy already, Ford. I've seen you speak. You're amazing. My biggest takeaway was how engaging you were, and I'm feeling that energy right now. So thank you for having me. I can tell we're going to have lots of fun here today.
Yes, and for full disclosure, for those people watching, she does not know what I'm going to ask, and I don't know what I'm going to ask. So why don't we just start with, tell me a little bit about that journey. I read on your website that you started franchising when you were like 4 years old, and the mascot, I'm a little exaggerating, but tell me a little bit about the growth that gave you the foundation in franchising, and then we'll get into some of what you're doing now.
Thank you. Yeah. It was quite the journey that I didn't even realize I was on. My dad started a company called M&M Food Market, formerly M&M Meat Shops, back in 1980. And so throughout the years, I did everything from, I think you saw that I dressed up as Kelly Kebab as a kid at grand openings. And I have to say, one thing my dad really understood when he was running and growing the business was the importance of community marketing and getting out there and creating buzz. And so, yeah, he just leveraged me to go out there and be the Kelly Kebab. But then over the years, had the opportunity to work in our corporate location and then go out in the field. And this was the time that I didn't realize how much I was learning until I looked back. 20-year-old female boss's daughter. My dad's like, "Hey, Ange, you should go out and work for our area developer in Western Canada." And sends me out. He's like, "You know the brand inside out. You'll be fine. No coaching, no training. Just go do it."
Right.
And you can only imagine. There I was, 20 years old. This cute female boss's daughter, showing up with these older male franchisees who had invested $400,000. I'm here to help you grow your business. So got put through the ringer. What do you know about business and taking risk and all that? And so, they humbled me pretty quick. And so spent a few years doing that, supporting franchisees, helping them with their, growing their business, and then became a multi-unit franchisee myself. So for 18 years, I had gone out and got the financing, did it the real way. I thought when my dad had the idea that I could go help with the stores on Vancouver, open the first stores on Vancouver Island, I thought he was talking corporately, and then I would just go manage them.
Right. Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, you go get the financing, you go be over there and you take the risk. And so anyway, did that 18 years, of course, learned a lot then. And now I was on the other side of being, having these field people come to me and try to help me. And I mean, I knew the brand inside out, so they didn't know what to help me with. So they always defaulted to like compliance, your light bulb's out and you're not selling this certain product. And it's like, well, that's because it's not available right now, or, but help me grow my business. So that's the journey that led to what I do now.
Well, that makes so much sense. And one of the things, I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I started at age 15, and over the time I've, had 17 different companies, 3 were 8-figure companies. Some I just abandoned, didn't go bankrupt, but some were like, okay, this dog won't hunt. I've got to let it go. But along the way, you learn all those things. And I think there's no, you can either learn from your own experience or other people's experience. And I know both you and I, we speak at conferences, we do consulting, franchise advisory, and that's what this show is about. It's giving people insights into how to actually scale. And I think our first takeaway really would be, look, you can learn from doing it yourself, and you're going to lose a lot of time and money, or you can invest in someone like Angela. And for those of you listening, the audio from this episode also becomes the Business Growth Show podcast. So I want to tell you where you can go find more about Angela, obviously online. Her name is spelled Angela Cote, and it's got the Coté, so I might probably pronounce that wrong.
Little accent on there.
But go to fieldcoachexperts.com. So fieldcoachexperts.com, you can find out more about her. You can look at her media kit. And if you're interested in having your own show, or if you're a franchise brand and you're looking for a powerful keynote speaker after you've hired me, then you know, yeah, by all means. But there's no shortage of business out there. So, franchise brands, what I love about franchising is, the franchisee invests, but they're usually clueless about what it's going to take to run their business, right? They think maybe they should start on their own, but they decide to buy a franchise. And it doesn't matter which brand they buy, whether it's a smaller company or a huge company. A lot of times they just don't follow their systems and they don't get the right type of coaching. So going back to our takeaway, you can learn from other people's experience. So I hope you're taking great notes today on this. So what do you feel is the biggest challenge that new franchisees have when they first, they've invested all this money and now their locations open, whether they're in home services or a retail location? What do you think their biggest challenge that they have to get training for and get coached for?
Mm-hmm. I'm going to start with the foundational problem. I would say is that they're often they come in not as like a business owner with a business owner mindset, right? Because that's why they chose franchising, except for those sophisticated multi-unit, multi-brand. But for the average franchisee, they're coming in and they didn't realize that all the hats they were going to need to wear, and they're not prepared for it, right? And so a sub point to that is, they get stuck working in the business, and then they don't. The number one thing that they really need to be doing is getting out there into their community and being the face of the brand, right? To build business. But they expect the business just to come because they chose a franchise. It especially makes me laugh when they buy a franchise that's like only early emerging and there's only like 10 locations, like, and they're expecting brand to be like, for me, even with M&M, we opened store number 300. And then over the years, the company grew to almost 500 locations. We never could take our foot off the community marketing gas.
No, you never can.
No. So I would say the number one thing is that they're not thinking like a business owner, but then to be a business owner, one of the things, the probably most important thing is that marketing and driving business themselves and in the local community.
Yeah, I would agree. When I'm asked to go to do a keynote, my two popular keynotes are local area mastery marketing, because they want to learn how to master their local marketing and boost sales. And I'm doing a lot on AI right now too, but only from the lens of business. But if you look at a franchise brand or any business, for that example, there's really the wheel of excellence, right? You've got operations, which is finance and accounting. You've got marketing and sales, and then you've got delivering the customer experience, being able to practitioner to be able to deliver whatever it is, whether it's retail or a service business. And so you have to. I'd like to hear your take on this. When I do presentations and I'm working with a franchise brand, or whether I'm working with a multi-unit owner. And for those of you listening, multi-unit owner means they've owned more than one franchise. Multi-brand owner means there's a lot of franchise owners that buy different brands. They might have 3 different companies and multiple units. It's interesting because you said, I want to say another term too, that like there's operator owners and owner operators, right? And so working on your business is what Angela's really talking about, is taking you have to do the daily operations of a business, the hiring and the delivery and the inventory and the payroll and all the other things that come with a business. But you also need to step back and make sure you're profitable. And more importantly, take advantage of your local area marketing. And that's the thing that scared. I just did a keynote presentation for a brand called Home Helpers Home Care. And I was the opening keynote speaker for their conference. And I went to lunch before my keynote, and I was the afternoon speaker. And I sat next to 2 franchises, and I said, well, how long have you been in the business? And they said, well, I've been in 3 months. I talked to the other guy. He said, well, I'm in about 9 months. And I said, how's it going? And the guy next to me said, well, it's not really going that well. And I said, well, tell me, what are your top challenges? He says, well, I bought this business. I spent all this money, and I just think corporate ought to do more to drive business. I don't understand why every time I turn on the news or turn on the TV, I see our competitors' ads everywhere, and I don't see anything for us. And so he was just, going down this little session that he was talking about, right? And so I said to him, I said, well, When was the last time you went to a chamber event or a community event or worked with your centers of influence or, have you sponsored any sports teams? Have you been to the schools? Like I gave him like 30 different questions. He'd done nothing. So I think that the challenge here is, I want them to take personal accountability for their own success. I mean, that's why I wrote a book called Accelerate, the ultimate guide for franchisees to maximize marketing and boost sales. And it's a great book that franchise brands now give to their franchisees because it's a subtle way of saying, hey, you're responsible. So I think you've run into that same thing, right?
Yeah. And, I always say, if it weren't for, if we didn't need a local owner, why would we even use the franchise model? The whole point of franchising, in my opinion, is that you get that local owner in the community that's out there, like we're talking about, as the face of the brand. Otherwise, the franchisor could just use a corporate model and hire a manager to stand in the store,
right,
or the coffee shop or whatever, if you don't need that. So to me, it's, and I'll tell you, one of the things that we do at AC Inc., we run a free weekly roundtable for different categories of people in franchising. And one of them is the field support teams. And yesterday, we had the field support roundtable because it's weekly. And oh my gosh, the topic always comes back to, we can't get our franchisees to do their community marketing or their local marketing. And they just over rely on the digital and the paid. And we're trying to switch that to help them understand that's the gravy. Like you first have to go out and be the face of the brand. So yeah, this is such a common pain point.
Well, when you think about the services and the work you do with brands to really help them transform, how do you keep coaching that you're doing for your franchisees or your field area reps or whatever from turning into firefighting? Like, how do you get them to focus on the highest and best use of their time?
Yeah, well, I love that you you're going there, because this is really what it's all about, is going from a consulting, we call it a consulting approach, to a coaching approach. Yeah. So with consulting, it is more that firefighting. It involves firefighting, but it's this sort of reactive, operational, answer questions. I'm the hero because I'm the consultant. I'm going to come in and I'm the smart one. Versus the coaching approach is more empowering, because you're getting the franchisee to start to be able to figure things out on their own, right? With the consulting approach, you end up with burnt out coaches because they're just so over dependent on, right? So you end up with burned out coaches, disengaged franchisees. People are, why are my franchisees disengaged? Well, because they don't think they need you, because all you're doing is going in and telling them what to do. And either they don't agree with you or you're not bringing value anymore. Like high performers, they don't need you to come and just tell them what to do. They want you to help them think bigger and think differently. So first of all, I just want to thank you for bringing that up, because it highlights, the consulting versus the coaching. How do we do that? Well, it starts with, really what we do at AC Inc., it starts with coaching and professional development for those people that are in the field, which they usually don't really get much of. Progressive brands do it, but they're usually out there just putting them through a leadership course or something. But we created content that is specific to this challenge, right? Because I lived and breathed it and would have loved to have this. So it's helping them understand that the way you do that is you start with the franchisee's goals. And a lot of franchisees don't know what their goals are. So it's not easy to, that's a skill in itself, is helping the franchisee understand, where are you trying to go with this? And then working with them to reverse engineer. And because they're more connected to what they want, they're more motivated, like their why, right? So when a franchisee gets on a call with a coach that's trying to be proactive and use this, what we call our strategic growth coaching approach, and the franchisee gets on the call and they're like, well, quick, can you just tell me this? Can you do that? The coach has to have the training, the confidence, and the tactile assertiveness to say, you know what, Ford, what you're asking for, I can see that feels really urgent, but what's more important here? Like, what's more important, me quickly answering these questions or helping you grow your business so you can make more money in your pocket, right? It's things like that. There's a lot more to it, but that's part of it. I think also one other thing I would add for how to get away from the firefighting is to have systems in place, like a ticketing system. Quick shout out to our friends at Easy Assist, who have I don't know if you met them at the CFA. They have an AI platform where the franchisor, it's secure, and the franchisor uploads all the content that they have, and the franchisee simply texts or emails or uses Slack or whatever they use to ask those redundant questions that are wasting time on the coaching call.
Yep.
So we can get, whether it's a ticketing system or AI or whatever, so that they're not, so we get on this call. This is a coaching call.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, I have a coaching program. It's available on my website. Like, so my coaching starts at 15 grand a month for 90 days. And that people always go, well, that's awfully expensive. I'm like, look, I want you to use the highest and best time, use of your time. And they always ask, well, how many tactics am I going to get? And I'm like, look, if you're asking the wrong question, the answer doesn't matter. Training isn't something you did. It's something you do. Getting access to me as a coach and a consultant is to help you strategically do things better. Because tactically, you can use AI or you can buy a book or, the tactics are a commodity, but the strategy is where you and I bring that higher level thinking to help them shift their consciousness, because unfortunately, they just don't know what they don't know. It's not that they don't care. It's not that they don't want to do local marketing. It's just that they don't really understand the value of it. And I think what you're doing, offering your service is amazing. Now, I want you to share, who is your ideal client? So just to set this up for our listeners and viewers today. So I believe this. So I'm going to say it, but then you need to correct me because I'm probably going to, I may mess this up, right? But it sounds to me like what you're aiming at is you're aiming at franchise brands that have area developers or franchise coaches, and they're helping their franchisees accelerate. So you're coming in and actually being the training facility or the leadership facility, I should say, for those coaches that are then in the field to help their franchisees. So you're working with the brand and the franchisor. Is that right?
Correct.
See how easy that was? I did it.
Yeah,
I'm going to give myself
yes.
I'm going to give myself a ding. I got a good answer. All right.
I love that. Yeah. So, but if I'll just, you were asking then, like, who is the ideal?
Yeah, who's the ideal client? Like, what size business do you work best with?
Yeah, well, there's sort of two categories. And just to clarify, so we have professional development courses and a full certification program for the folks in the field. Franchisor hires us for those people to get that education. We're really seeing, I mean, the ideal, or probably where that fits the most is larger brands, larger than like maybe 200 units and up, where they've got a number of these people, these field coaches, FBCs, or whatever the brand wants to call them. But we do have people in the earlier stages, like emerging franchisors, where maybe the founder or like someone on the sort of executive team will take the certification. So it's kind of wide range, but it's more for the more established brands. The other thing we do is we created what's called the strategic growth coaching framework. And this is going deep into, people were always asking, like, first of all, how do I get my franchisees to think like business owners, not just operate?
Right. It's the biggest thing they asked me too. Yeah.
Going back to that. Yeah. Right. So there's that. But then they would say things like, something's not working with my support. And when I would look back at what we did at M&M, we weren't doing what we're doing now, but we were definitely more progressive in that we were looking forward with franchisees. So I looked at that, and I went talking to all kinds of brands, research, going out to these conferences, franchise conferences, IFA, CFA, all these things, and really uncovered that nobody was really, it seemed, helping franchisors with exactly not just what the support would look like, but how to make it effective. And so this strategic growth coaching framework we created, it teaches everything about, like, the cadence. How often should you be meeting with franchisees? What should you do on those calls? What do you do if they don't engage with you? They don't show up. How do you deal with top performers that don't think they need coaching and support? And so this framework, we take that into brands and we get them their framework leveled up, because they're usually not doing all of this. The really progressive sort of early adopters, or people that have been in franchising and are now at a brand new company, that like a company that's just starting out,
right,
they're bringing it in right away because they get it. But we also see people with 150 franchisees, and they're like, something still isn't working. And they're like, well, we could certify your team, we can do professional development, or we can do that and go put in this framework and teach you how to use it, customize it to your brand, and get you going with that. So we're working with brands on that. And yeah, again, it's been interesting because it's the early adopters. It's the progressive brands that are bringing us in right now. And it's starting to get a little bit more clear to people, but I think people are struggling with what really, because it's new, right? It's different.
Right. And I think that, and it's just like anything else, they don't know what they don't know. And so bringing someone in to give them a new perspective and a fresh perspective. I always look for for my clients that, they're open-minded and coachable and accountable and proactive, and, they
No
have
ego, like humble.
Yeah, because sometimes, and I've had clients that want to bring me in, and, one brand was like, well, we're at 50 units. I want to get it to 100 units and flip it. How can you help me? And I'm like, I don't really want to be associated with that, because you're just kind of pump and dump. You're just trying to, and versus the brands who, you meet with the owners and you meet with the founder of the company who, now they've scaled it. So they need to bring in other talent. So they're still the founder. Maybe they're the chairman, but they're probably not the CEO, or maybe they are the CEO, but they've got a director of operations or someone that runs it. Right. And so I'm just curious, what is your strategy to work with a franchisee who's just checked out? Like, how do you re-engage them where, they've been there for 10 years, they're doing things the same way, the brand's progressive, they're trying to get everybody on board to make a shift, and they have a franchisee that even though they've got 10 years experience, they've really got 1 year they've repeated 10 times. So how do you get them to re-engage?
Yeah, so it might sound obvious, but you got to have that hard conversation. It's not even a hard conversation. It's why are you doing this? Like, what's your why? It always comes back to the why, right? So what's your why? Well, it could be, I'm just kind of happy making 80, 90 grand a year because I don't really have to do anything. I can drive my kids around to their activities and all that. Now, if that's the case and you can't find a why and a motivation, then you have to have the conversation of stagnation isn't an option. You're tying up a market, and that's not fair to your to the rest of the brand, the way that you're operating. You're negatively impacting their investment. And so maybe it's time to talk about helping you get out. And if that perks them up, and then they're like, well, no, actually, I don't want to get out. Okay, well, then we've got to level up how we're operating. So that's if that's how I deal with that. If they're
that makes sense. That's a really good idea.
But often it really is just that they've lost track of their why, and that. Right. And it changes too, right? So like originally they got into it because they thought they were going to do this, and now they've had kids, and they want to be able to raise enough money to put their kids through university or college or whatever, But then, okay, so then let's revert, let's get you re-engaged, let's reverse. And this is what we're seeing in people that are using our methods, is that the franchisees are showing up, their engagement is increasing. That's one of the metrics we track. And now they're like, yeah, because I want to get this. And then, we're reverse engineering the steps, and they want to be held accountable.
Right.
Again, it doesn't work for everybody. You have to see if you can get the hook in and get them to want to grow, right? If they don't, then we really got to work towards moving them out.
Yeah. For me, and I've run a marketing agency for decades too. And, people always ask me, well, how do I increase conversions? How do I increase awareness? And I always tell people, lead with benefits. If you want to get someone to do something, it goes back to their why, right? Their why is their benefit. If you can't connect to their why or the benefit, they're not going to, you can give them all the strategies, but you got to connect to the why. I spend a lot of my time working with brands on that, getting clarity around why they're doing it, and with their teams and leaders and things too. Yeah. What do you do with, so now that you've got a brand, you're working with the brand, you're working with their coaches, but their franchisees are just skipping coaching calls. Like what do you do there?
Well, I think it's similar to what I said there. Just, someone's got to have a conversation with them. What's going on? Like, hey, Ford, what's going on? Where are you at? Why aren't you here? Why aren't you here? And you have to really bring it down to the human level. And this, by the way, is what we're trying to address and change in franchising is bringing the human element back into things. It's not rinse and repeat. It's not just, oh, here, we're going to give you a default because you didn't show up for a meeting or whatever. It's how can we get you engaged? And if it's in that conversation, you're going to uncover what's going on. If they might tell you, I just found out my wife has cancer. Oh, actually, we have an expression we use. I didn't make it up, so I can't take credit for it, but I love it. It works so well in all these scenarios. If you can name it, you can tame it.
Yeah.
So you've got to find out with the disengagement, what's going on. And maybe it's that the coach isn't bringing any value. That was what was happening with us. Like our field, they were called field consultants back then, would try to set up a meeting with us. And we're like, it's a waste of time. It's not doing anything.
Right.
So then that goes back to what we do. Like we've had field support people on our field support roundtable that I mentioned, or you can call them field coaches again, FBCs, whatever people call them. And I'm not talking necessarily about people that go out into the field. This is also just they're coaching franchisees on Zoom or whatever.
Right.
We had one that, and there's many stories like this, but I'm just specifically highlighting this one. She works in a business that she's an FBC for an automotive company. And the franchisees are, a lot of them are men, and she's this, more kind of smaller woman. And she struggled with credibility with especially this one franchisee, and he wasn't showing up. He wasn't responding to her calls. And we workshopped it together and got her to go back to the guy and say, listen, like, I recognize that you might not think I have anything to bring you, but let's just step back for a minute and find out, like, what could I maybe help you with? And then he might say, well, I don't know. And she could say, well, do you have a strategic plan? What's your ROI on your marketing efforts? Oh, I don't know. Bringing it to that next level, but really it's the sort of that going in that vulnerable space for the coach to admit, I don't know what you need, but can we look at your financials together and let me see if I can find something that might be helpful. You get that little win. That field coach after that came back a couple weeks later, and she's like, he won't stop calling me now.
Right.
Because I brought him value and I built trust because I let the guard down and said, like, field people, this happened to me. Like they when they don't know what to do, they default to compliance, but they think authority now. I'm going to use authority. Right. And that doesn't work. We're business, like franchisees are business owners, right? Like that's why we believe so much in the person in the field has the hardest job in franchising and the most important job. Like they're the one that's supposed to be able to get the franchisee to do what they need to do, be compliant, all these things. And we're putting junior people in that are being paid $80,000 a year, and they just know the brand. They haven't been trained and coached on emotional and social intelligence. So that's what we're trying to bring that to the heart of things. And ultimately, everybody in the franchise company should understand that the franchisee is the priority. And I think that's what my dad really knew. I say knew because he sold to private equity about 12 years ago. He exited, but he drop everything when the franchisees are upset, drop everything, find out why. Okay. They're upset. Maybe it's not valid, but we need to give them that voice, and we need to be, they need to be accountable to their job too. We're not saying kiss their butt. Right. It's that back and forth. So yeah, I know that was a big rant. Hopefully that was okay.
No. This is this is what's really clear. And again, even if you're not in franchising, you can take these lessons to heart, right? Because if you're the owner of the company and you've got leaders or different department heads, it's the same thing for them. And then the department heads have their employees or their staff or their direct reports, and you got to help them. So it really comes down to communication. I mean, there's terms that get thrown out a lot around business growth. There's culture, leadership, management, team building, communication, and change. And you could, everybody has a different definition of what all those words mean. But at the end of the day, it really is communication and studying human behavior, emotional intelligence, understanding the personality styles, understanding neuro-linguistic programming, not to be manipulative, but just to communicate, understanding what it takes. And in my career, when I first had my first business, I built a sporting goods company. Well, I built several companies, but the one that had the most employees was 150 employees, and it was doing $50 million a year in sales. And, that's a lot for an entrepreneur to be managing, but I had a lot of turnover, and, I didn't understand it. And so I went to look for coaches, and I wanted team building because I wanted the team. And I had a really great leadership coach came in, and he sat down after doing 360s with all my leaders. And he said, you don't need team building. It's you. You're the one who's always at the scene of the crime. And I'm open-minded and I'm coachable. So I was like, okay, tell me more. And he goes, well, here's what you're doing. I was delegating, Angela, without details. I was giving priorities. I was moving the target every day. I was creating my own little chaos adult daycare and didn't even understand what I was doing. So a lot of times it's the awareness. And so now I understand, sometimes it's the leadership, sometimes it is the team, hire for attitude, train for skills. And what I love about what you're doing with the people at the brands you work with is you're helping develop them exponentially. So once they learn these strategies and tactics from you and your team, and they go through the weekly roundtables and they participate in your program and they use your frameworks, they're really able to actually accelerate growth, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And yeah, just again, coming back to this, the skills and the ability, it comes down, like what you said as well, whether it's franchising or just people to people, relationships, is being able to create buy-in and listen and know that people are going to respond differently and all these things. And that's the thing that we saw was missing. Like, people would say, oh, for the person in the field, what background should I look for? Should I get somebody who's already in franchising? No, maybe.
Right. Maybe not. Right.
Maybe not. And just because they worked for a franchise doesn't mean they were doing it right. Just like, should you hire a server just because they worked as a server in a restaurant? No, you still need to vet all the things. And so it's just been so overlooked. This emotional, social intelligence, all these skills, leadership, communication, like you said, these coaches, they have to have influence, especially which is often, they haven't been a business owner themselves. They haven't been a franchisee.
They haven't spent their own money to do it.
Thinks, well, what do you know about business? But it's like, and that's what happened to me, right? As a young female boss's daughter, that they laughed at me. And so if I had been able to say, you know what, and maybe I think I had a little bit of the natural DNA to do the job, but to be able to have those tools and resources at my fingertips to deal with those tough situations, it would have changed everything and help them grow exponentially.
Well, as we get ready to wrap up this episode, I want to remind everybody who we've been talking to. It's Angela Coté. You can find her at fieldcoachexperts.com. And when you go to the website, I want you to scroll down on her homepage and I want you to download the Automate, Delegate, Eliminate template. So this is it. This is right in alignment. You saw me at the Canadian Franchise Association at the keynote. I talk about, it's not about doing more, everybody. It's what do you want to start doing? What do you want to stop doing? And what do you want to continue doing? So I'm only assuming that that's what that resource has. So whether you're in franchise or not, you can go to fieldcoachexperts.com, go scroll down the page. It's real clear to get that little opt-in. Any final thoughts you have for our listeners as we wrap it up?
Oh my gosh, so many. Well, I'll just quickly say about the Automate, Delegate, Eliminate. What we find, so many people are overwhelmed. And they don't know what to do. And so that's the first thing we always say, whether you're a franchisee, a leadership team member, is go and figure out what you're doing that you shouldn't be doing and what could you delegate and all. That's how you scale, right? So it sounds like you and I talk the same language on that. I think I just will emphasize as my final point that franchising, the human element in franchising, when a franchisor really gets that and starts wrapping their head around that, that's when you're going to get that growth. And what we say is you'll unlock the hidden profitability in the business once you really start to wrap your head around that. So if anybody wants to know more about that, I'd love if they reach out and follow me on LinkedIn. I got lots of this kind of content coming out all the time too.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Angela.
Thank you. This was tons of fun.
Thank you for tuning in to Fordify Live. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the Business Growth Show podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. We air weekly at 11 a.m. Central Time. So until next week, keep pushing the boundaries and never stop growing.